In the summer of 1947, the division of the Indian subcontinent forced nearly 15 million people from their homes. By the time the dust settled, an estimated 1.5 million people were dead. The man legally responsible for drawing the lines that caused this mass exodus was a British barrister named Sir Cyril Radcliffe. British Prime Minister Clement Attlee intentionally sought a neutral outsider, someone with no prior interest or ties to the subcontinent, who could appear impartial. To the British leadership, the fact that Radcliffe had never set foot in India wasn't a liability, it was his primary qualification. This map shows India before the 1947 partition. Radcliffe was expected to slice through the massive territories of Punjab and Bengal using outdated census data isolated in a Lahore hotel. Tracking fleeing demographics across these vast distances was nearly impossible. Standard record-keeping collapses. The official records left behind are cold treaties and broad estimates. They give us a geopolitical map of a country divided, but they leave a massive void where the human reality of the tragedy belongs. To understand what actually happened on the ground, we have to look past the government archives. Where political documents failed to capture the emotional devastation of 1947, novelists and poets stepped into the gap. Writers like Intezar Hussain with his novel Basti, and Khushwant Singh, pictured here, with his landmark book Train to Pakistan, provided a vital framework for processing this trauma. These authors translated historical facts into narrative art. They detailed the collapse of trust among neighbors and created haunting, visceral imagery, most notably the death trains that arrived at stations carrying only corpses. But literature has its limits. A novel typically structures its events around a tragic climax, a moral lesson, or symbolic closure. Real, lived trauma rarely wraps up so neatly. Fiction helps us feel the emotional weight of the division, but it remains an imagined reality. To ground these stories, we need the voices of the people who actually survived the crossing. This brings us to the lived archive, the oral histories of survivors like Hari Singh, Manoj Singh, and Girdhari Lal Pawa, who eventually resettled in Dehradun, India. Their recorded testimonies confirm the most terrifying aspects of the novels. Hari Singh, for example, clearly remembers fleeing near Lahore and witnessing a train packed with the mutilated bodies of Hindus and Sikhs, proving the literary death train was a concrete reality. However, these oral histories also complicate the story. The survivors do not just recount violence. They describe moments that contradict the strict dividing lines drawn by both politicians and novelists. When rioters attacked Hari Singh's family in Gujranwala, they were saved by a Muslim named Chirag Telly. At tremendous risk to his own life, Telly hid the family under his bed and successfully diverted the attackers. Actions like Telly's challenge the persistent assumption that partition was driven entirely by absolute religious hatred. Even in the middle of widespread slaughter, people made the choice to protect their neighbors across religious lines. These messy, morally ambiguous memories reveal a level of ethical complexity and human resilience that a geopolitical map simply cannot show, and a tragic novel might easily overlook. When we bring these perspectives together, we get a more holistic picture. The maps show us the physical shift of borders, the literature translates the internal trauma, and the oral histories ground those abstractions in the specific, contradictory choices people made to survive. But the window to capture these oral histories is closing. The generation that lived through 1947 is passing away and taking their first-hand memories with them. These accounts of sudden displacement, chaotic journeys under threat, and the struggle to rebuild life in a camp are not isolated to the past. They match the exact conditions faced by millions fleeing violence today in places like Syria, Sudan, and Myanmar. These multi-layered accounts prove that the line on Radcliffe's map was never just a border. It was a rupture in millions of individual lives. By documenting the moments where solidarity survived the violence, we preserve the evidence that even in a crisis of this scale, human connection remains possible.